Hey everyone, Pastor Michael here. So glad you could join me for this new series. I'm excited about it, about worldview. You say, why would I even be interested in this series about worldview? I think there are many reasons, and I really don't have time to get all of them. But say you're a young person and you're just saying, hey, I just believe in God. I'm saved. I walked an aisle, prayed a prayer, and I'm going to heaven. What difference does worldview make? It makes all the difference in the world because worldview is going to affect how you think. It's going to affect how you see the world, and your worldview is going to be challenged. You're going to be challenged as time rolls on, and so I think this is critically important for you to understand what is your worldview, how did you get your worldview, how do you protect your worldview, and how do you know what's the right worldview. Now, if you're a parent, this is critically important, and I think the applications are going to be many because I think what we're going to see is that we've done a poor job of training our kids on worldview. We're not helping them. We did take them to church. They know the Bible stories, but I'm going to get into this a little bit later. But that doesn't mean we've really helped them to withstand what's going on in our culture today. See, today, it's really tough to identify your worldview and keep it where it's supposed to be as a Christian because there are so many competing worldviews out there. It used to be we grew up in a Christian culture where most of the people around us were Christians, and so it just was natural for us to have a Christian worldview. Today, it's not that way anymore. There are competing worldviews that are vying for our kids, and it's working. It's tearing our kids away from the Christian faith. And so I think this is a huge thing to talk about because it's going to help us in so many different ways. So let's dive right in, and let's start with the first question because a lot of people really don't know what we mean by worldview. In fact, I was on the internet the other day and talking about some worldview issues and writing a post and somebody was replying back and they were talking about, their worldview, and they were talking about, well, my worldview is a variety of things. I believe this about this issue and that about that political issue, and I'm a conservative or I'm a Democrat, and these are all your worldview. Your worldview is just a hodgepodge of different things. No, that is not what your worldview is. Your worldview is a set of beliefs, fundamental beliefs, that you use to interpret life and the world. In other words, when you look around and you see things, you're interpreting them by your worldview. And so you're going to identify with certain issues and make decisions based on your worldview. And that worldview is going to guide your choices and behaviors. That's what a worldview is. It's like the glasses you put on when you look at the world or you look at different situations or experiences or circumstances or arguments or any of those kind of things. You bring something to the table. And what you bring with you is your worldview. I teach a class here at Amy Christian Academy with 5th and 6th graders, and I'm trying to help them to understand that. And even at a young age, they get it. Because we talked about how, wearing certain glasses like colors the world a little bit. And it's kind of like how you look at the world. It's fundamentally how you look at things and how you interpret them and then how you evaluate them. That's your worldview. It's the glasses that you put on. And some people don't even perceive the glasses that they have. They're just there. And because of certain fundamental beliefs, that kind of determines their outlook on various kinds of issues. It's why we live in such a society today where there's so many different viewpoints and people arguing about things, why they're wearing different glasses. When I was younger, I didn't realize that I was nearsighted. In fact, I wear contacts now, but back then I didn't realize it. And for years, I guess my vision had become more and more nearsighted, and I realized that I couldn't see as well as other people, so I had to move closer to the front of the room in class, and also knew that in sports I couldn't see in the distance as well, and it kind of hindered me in some ways that I didn't even realize it was hindering me. I was just so used to seeing the world the way that I saw the world that I didn't realize I wasn't seeing the world clearly. But then I went, and had the eye exam, and they gave me some glasses and took care of that. And then I could see so much better. And I remember walking into the classroom or going onto the field, and I realized, man, I can see. So it's no longer hard for me to interpret what's going on at a distance, and it was so much clearer. It's kind of like when we have a worldview, it kind of skews. And so not all worldviews are the right worldview, and some worldviews skew the world in such a way that we're not really seeing very clearly. But what it is, it's this set of fundamental beliefs that enables me to interpret the world around me. And then it also guides me in the way that I think and even the decisions that I'm going to make. And these are not just beliefs about everything. These are the fundamental beliefs about reality. It's what I really believe is real. And that, whatever I believe, it's going to affect how I look at things, how I view things, how I think about things, and how I learn, and the kinds of things that I learn, and what I see as being real. And then, of course, that's obviously going to affect my behavior. This is huge. Now, one's worldview can also be called like your philosophy, or your philosophy of life, or your mindset, or your outlook on life, or a formula for life, an ideology, faith, or even religion. We'll get into that because these hugely affect the way that we look at the world. And it helps us to understand other people too, because then we begin to understand what's their worldview. Why do they say, or why do they believe certain things, or why do they take a certain side in a given issue? Well, it's their worldview. And if they understood their worldview, then we can get down to the real issue. And a lot of times we can avoid arguments, or at least take the argument where it really needs to go, if we would get off of the issue itself and look at what led us to different conclusions, because that helps us to understand each other. Now, there are 5 areas that we need to talk about here that tell us about our worldview. Here's how you can examine your own worldview. First of all, what do you say, or how do you understand God? What do you say about God? Is he real? Does he really exist? And what kind of God is he? That's huge, because the way you think about God, if he exists, is going to determine a whole lot of things in your life. You see, if you believe in God, then obviously you're going to adjust to that. If you don't believe in God, then you don't have to respond to that at all. It's not just a part of our life, it's a fundamental part of our life. It's huge. The lack of belief in God suddenly puts everything back on me. It's my own decision. I am basically God. I have to decide what I want to do. But if God is there, then I have to relate to God. And can I relate to God? There's huge questions about God, not only if God exists, but who is God? What is he like? That are going to influence everything I do in life. If I really believe that God is, and I really believe he's the God of the Bible, then I'm going to act in certain ways. I'm going to believe certain things. I'm going to make certain kinds of decisions based on that truth, my belief about God. But if I do believe in God, but not the God of the Bible, but some other God, then I'm going to adjust. My worldview is going to shift and change, and I'm going to look at things differently. And if I don't believe in God at all, then obviously I don't have to even respond to those particular questions at all. So that's the first one. All right, number 2, the second area that is so critical to a worldview and helps us to understand what we're thinking and why we're thinking it is, how do we look at and understand the universe? How do we look at this universe, this world that we live in and the universe? Is this an accident? Because if it is, there's huge implications of that. On the other hand, if it's a special creation of God, then there are huge implications for that. And they're so far apart, it's going to lead us to all kinds of different conclusions. This is a fundamental belief. Either I believe God created the world and it's a special creation, or I believe some other variation. But whatever I believe about the universe is going to have huge implications on how I think and how I act. The third area is the area of mankind, people. How do I look at people? How do I look at other races, for that matter? How do I look? Are they special creations of God? If you're a biblical Christian, you believe that they're a special creation of God. And so you're going to handle people differently. Now, you might be inconsistent with the way you handle people, but if I don't believe that, if I believe that we're just the product of random chance and survival of the fittest, and those are huge implications for that. And if I believe that, that I have the right to say, well, one group of people is superior to another group of people, and therefore there's huge implications for that politically and otherwise. In other words, how I view people is a huge, huge part of my worldview. And there are implications that are far-reaching of what I believe about other people. Now, the fourth area is the area of truth. What do I believe about truth? Is there fundamentally things that are true? Can truth be found? Can polar opposite things both be true? Can they contradict one another and still be true? You see, there's all kinds of different ideas about truth. Now, that's a fundamental belief. And based on that fundamental belief about truth, It's going to determine how I view all kinds of issues in my life and how I perceive things around me. And then the fifth and final area is the area of right and wrong. How do I know what's really right and how do I know what's wrong? What's going on in our culture today, in every walk and every area, it seems like, and no matter where you go, we're arguing about all kinds of different things. But how do we know what's really right? And who gets to determine what's right? Do I get to determine? Is it my opinion or is it the majority of opinion? Do you get to determine what's right? Is it, government gets to decide what is right? Who gets to decide what is really right and what is really wrong? This is huge because who gets to decide determines a whole bunch of issues that I can decide upon. See, that's fundamental. If I don't clearly understand where right and wrong comes from, or whatever my worldview says about that is going to determine how I'm going to answer all kinds of questions in my life. This is my worldview. So my worldview is how I understand God. It's how I understand the universe around me. It's how I understand people and who they are and how we're supposed to treat them and where they come from. It's my understanding of truth. And how do we determine what is true? And then finally, it is how do we determine what is right and wrong? What is my worldview? You see, when we answer these 5 questions, we can kind of begin to understand what our worldview is. See, our understanding of these things will determine how we interpret the world, how we interpret different situations, how we interpret the information that we come in, the things that we watch and read and see, and we get on our social media and see different things. It's like the view that we're looking at, and it kind of interprets these things so we know how to think about these things, and then it also eventually kind of comes out in the way that we live our lives. And so this becomes our philosophy, it becomes our opinion, it becomes our philosophy of life, it's our mindset, it's our outlook, it's our formula, it's our ideology, it's even our faith and religion. This is the ultimate things that we believe. And as a result of believing those things, we now have a worldview. And so the question next is, what does the Bible say about worldview? Well, first of all, the word worldview is not really in the Bible, but the concept certainly is. Now, we could say from the outset that the Bible itself is a worldview. In other words, the Bible presents to us particular truth claims about God, who is He, the universe, what is it, where did it come from, about people, who are we, where did we come from, and what is this about, why do we do the things we do, what kind of value do we have. It tells us about truth and where truth comes from, and it also tells us about right and wrong. Now, whether we agree or disagree with those things, the point is this, is that is a worldview. The Bible clearly presents a worldview. This is a view about us. This is a view about all these things. And so from the book of Genesis all the way through the Old Testament, and then you roll into the New Testament with Jesus, Jesus himself is presenting to us a worldview. He is telling us what we're supposed to believe, according to Jesus, about God, what we're supposed to believe about the universe, what we're supposed to believe about people, what we're supposed to believe about truth, and what we're supposed to believe about right and wrong. And if we adopt the viewpoint, the worldview of the Bible, then we're going to accept those things as being true and adopt those particular worldview truths, and then that's going to affect how we think about life. That's going to affect how we handle different things that come our way. The problem is a lot of people haven't really thought this through. Even Christians haven't necessarily thought this through. Now, the Bible clearly recognizes that there are other worldviews. Now, think about this. Even back when Moses wrote the book of Genesis and in the Old Testament, it is very clear that there around the nation of Israel, around them, were other worldviews. I mean, there are all kinds of religions. There are all kinds of beliefs about God. There are all kinds of beliefs about the universe. There's all kinds of beliefs about people. There's all kinds of belief about truth. There's all kinds of beliefs about right and wrong. And so there's a plethora of viewpoints out there, and the Bible recognizes that. It recognizes that we all don't come to the same conclusions. So for example, in the book of Colossians, chapter 2 and verse 8, the Apostle Paul is writing to a church, a particular church, and he is warning them about these other worldviews and how that Christians are supposed to adopt a particular worldview and reject other worldviews. And so, and he wants them to be aware that we can't let worldviews that are outside of the church come inside of the church, because it corrupts the message. It corrupts the worldview. So here's what he says. He says, see to it that no one takes you captive. Now, it's an interesting word there, the word captive, because we get it. Okay, to be taken captive means that, maybe you were in a battle and you lost and you surrendered. And so now you are in the custody, you are completely controlled by your captor. And so you don't get to do what you want to do. You don't get to go where you want to go. You don't get, your opinion doesn't matter. You are now captive by your captor. And so what Paul is saying is there are ideas, there are truth claims in the universe of ideas that are in humanity that can take you captive. And he's warning you that there are bad ideas out there, that there are lots of human ideas that are bad. They're not good. And they will take you captive where you won't really be in control of yourself. You're being guided. And this is where I was saying, sometimes people don't realize they have a worldview, but they do. And that worldview has kind of captivated them. And so it kind of guides them in their thinking, and they don't even realize that they're being captivated. They're captive to this worldview that has come to their attention. And now they're living their lives in certain ways because of their worldview. And so what Paul is saying is, be careful here. There are false ideas out there that can really take your life captive and bring you to places that you really don't want to go, and that compete with the worldview of Jesus. Now, notice what he says, see to it that no one takes you captive by philosophy. Now, that word philosophy is a Greek word that literally means religion, speculation, or investigation. In other words, it's as close a word, philosophy, as we can get to the idea of worldview. In other words, it's that how do we know knowledge, and how do we get knowledge, and where do we get it from? Speculation, investigation. Does it come from us? Am I the creator of what is true? And what Paul is saying, what the Bible is clearly telling us, is that there are worldviews out there, ideas that are dangerous. And these philosophies and empty deceit that are according to human tradition, which is what it says next, that they will captivate you, and they can lead you down a path you don't want to go. And this is according to the elemental spirits of the world. And what he's saying is that this is part of the sin problem, all right? So from the very beginning, humankind wanted to rebel against God. They wanted to be their own God. They wanted to separate themselves from what God wanted them to do and try to know right and wrong themselves, good and evil, the tree of knowledge of good and evil. Go back to the story of Genesis, and you can see what's going on here. That there's the spirit of humanity that says, hey, we don't need God. We're going to be our own God. And what the Bible is warning about is that we allow that kind of thinking to enter into the church, the people of God. That we're not supposed to follow that line of teaching. That Christians who believe in Jesus are supposed to say, hey, we follow Jesus now. And our worldview comes from Jesus. Notice what it says, and not according to Christ. In other words, he's saying, don't follow worldviews that are not according to Christ. When we evaluate our worldviews, what do we believe about God? What do we believe about the universe? What do I believe about people? What do I believe about truth? And what do I believe about right and wrong? The way I need to evaluate that worldview is based on, is that what Jesus taught? Because what's going to happen is, and this is what Paul is warning the church, is that we can say that we believe in Jesus. We can walk an aisle, pray a prayer, say, hey, I'm going to heaven, I'm a Christian. But then we adopt worldviews, ideas that are not according to Christ. And those ideas will captivate us. They will lead us astray. They will get us going in different directions. So the Bible, to answer our question, what does the Bible say about worldviews? The Bible is clear that there are competing worldviews out there, and that they are dangerous, and that we need to be very careful as Christians. If we really claim the name of Christ, if we really say that we believe in Jesus, then we can't just say we believe in Jesus and adopt these worldviews. That will hold us captive. That will captivate us. It'll capture us. It'll lead us in places that we don't want to go. And so Paul is very clear in Colossians as he warns Christians, hey, don't let that happen. See to it that no one takes you captive by philosophy and empty deceit, according to human tradition, according to the elemental spirits of the world, and not according to Christ. And so Christians, we need to address this and say, what would Jesus say about God? What would Jesus say about the world? What would Jesus say about people? What does Jesus say about truth? And what does Jesus say about what is right and wrong? And so this brings us to our third question, and that's this. Why study worldviews? Isn't this just too much work? I mean, I believe I'm a Christian. Isn't that enough? No, it's not enough. And this is exactly why the Bible warns us to be careful in these areas, because we need to know what we're supposed to believe, why we believe it, and then we're supposed to defend ourselves against these creeping in other thoughts, ideologies, worldviews, things that are ideas can hurt us, and they can lead us astray from Jesus. And so the challenge for us as Christians is to think distinctively Christian. In other words, I need to learn and train myself how to think correctly. This is why I need to study. I don't want to be caught captive. I don't want to be a Christian in name only. I don't want to be someone who says I believe in Jesus, but I don't even believe the same things that Jesus believed. I want to be one who says, you know what? I'm not in charge here. God's in charge. And so I'm not going to change my viewpoint based on worldviews that are out there. I'm going to listen to Jesus, and I'm going to listen to what he says so that my worldview is the same as Jesus. I believe the same things that Jesus believed. That's huge. You know, I've noticed in the church today that a lot of people want the benefits of the church, but they want to modify God or modify Jesus to fit what they want. And so, in other words, they kind of hear the opinions of the world, and then they come into the church and say, well, I want Jesus to think the way I think. I want Jesus to see things the way, we need to update Jesus. We need to update God. We need to update the Bible because it's just, it's just so old and it's just so traditional and it's just so old-fashioned that we got to update God. I think if God were in here in this day and age, he would probably say this. Okay, now what we are doing is we are taking the philosophy, the worldview outside of the church, which doesn't agree with us, and bringing it into the church and trying to change God to fit us. We're trying to change Jesus to fit us. We're trying to change the gospel to fit us. We're trying to change right and wrong to fit us. Now that's dangerous, is what Paul's saying. And the reason we need to study this is because we really need to see and understand that there are false worldviews, and that those false worldviews are coming into the church, and we're using them to modify our religion. But it's not our religion. This is the religion of Jesus. This is the teaching of Jesus. This is the worldview of Jesus. And if I'm going to be true to Jesus, who I believe in for my salvation, I believe in that he's the Son of God, then I've got to be true to what he says. And so this is why we need to study it. Dr. William Lane Craig said this. He said, the man who claims to have no need for philosophy, in other words, the teaching and understanding of these kind of things, is the one most apt to be fooled by it. It's a lot of work to think through these things. And some people today, it seems to me, they just don't want to think. They just want, I know what I believe, and it doesn't matter. No, we need to learn to think. God gave us brains, and we're supposed to love God, not only with our heart, but with our mind. And to love God with our mind means to really think this through, really study it, really understand it, and get to what's going on here. So let's look at why we're studying it. Number one, we need to study it because it interprets and explains and defines life and the world around us. Folks, we need the big picture of this. If you ever worked a puzzle, you know exactly what I'm talking about. You dump this puzzle on the table, and you got all these pieces. Now, when you were little, that puzzle only had a few pieces, and it wasn't that hard to put together. And when we were little, it wasn't hard to understand our worldview. Our worldview pretty much came from our parents, came from important people around us, what they said. So they told us, hey, God loves you. They told God is love. They told us some very simple messages, and we just believed it. We trust our parents. We don't know anything else. There's very few puzzle pieces here. And the complicated things in life were not that complicated. But as we get older, life gets more complicated. There's more information out there. There's a whole bunch more. We're so in tune to what is going on all around us. And this has really changed over the past 20, 30 years. In that, before, our world was really limited. It was mainly the people we were around, where we went to church, where we went to work, and that was it. But now, because of the internet and because of social media and all these different avenues we have, truth claims are being thrown at us every day. And we watch on TV, the advertising that goes on. It's just huge. We have all these things. And so the puzzle becomes more complicated. And as it becomes more complicated, the issues become bigger, like what we really believe about God. So when we were little, we were taught, hey, well, God is love, and God is good. And we thought that. And then some bad things happened, or maybe something happened in our life and we prayed for God to fix it and God didn't fix it. And so now we're wondering, well, if God is good, why didn't he do that? And we begin to look at some of these bigger questions of life about the problems of pain and evil and what's going on in the world. And it's not so simplistic anymore. And pretty soon, we were taught certain things about right and wrong when we were little, and we just trusted our parents and those people around us, our pastors and teachers. But then we got other people saying, well, what about this and what about this? And begin to question our morals and begin to say, well, here's the difference. And we begin to doubt what we believe. And so our worldview becomes far more complicated. And we begin to ask some very serious questions about the existence of God. Who is God? What does he do? Does he really love us? Does he really care? The universe, is the universe really a special creation of God? Or is this just, some random accident? And we begin to hear other evidence and scientific evidence, and it begins to confuse us. And then we got issues about people and what is really right and wrong, and how do we get to truth? And all these things become far more complicated. And so imagine you have a 2,000-piece puzzle and you just throw it on the table and you're looking through all these pieces. Now, when the coronavirus first hit and we were in quarantine, we did a few puzzles around my house. My wife really enjoyed. I don't really like doing them, but she likes doing them. And so, we did a few puzzles and I joined them periodically. But what do you do to put this puzzle? You organize it. Well, how do you organize it? Well, you look at the picture on the box, right? You look at the picture and you go, well, here's the picture. And we did this thing. We had a car in it and there was a store in the background. And then there was blue sky and some trees kind of over here, and there's a road down here and a bicycle and different things that were in this picture. And so as we looked at that picture, we began to organize the pieces based on where they would land in the picture. So it looks like part of the bike, so we put it over here. This looks like part of the sky, we put it over here. And we organize the pieces. This is the outside because it has flat edges, and we put that and we kind of organized everything. And how do we organize it? How do we interpret these different things that were happening? Well, based on the big picture. Well, what's the big picture? It's our worldview. Now, imagine if you had a picture that didn't really match what the pieces were. Well, that would be very confusing. You'd have a hard time figuring out where to put your pieces. And you might come to all kinds of weird conclusions about what things are and where to put them. And you probably never get the puzzle done because you wouldn't know what to do. Or maybe if someone took other pieces and threw them in there, it didn't match the picture that you're at. So the big picture is very important if you're going to figure out all these different pieces. And so is your worldview. If you have a wrong worldview that doesn't fit the pieces, you're going to get very frustrated with the different pieces. In fact, you might give up. You might throw your hands up and say, whoa, I can't even do this because I don't know where to put these pieces. I always heard that this is this. I always believe this about God. I always believe this about this and truth. And this is right and wrong. But what about this piece? And what about that piece? And we don't even know what to do with those things. And then our worldview gets skewed. Or maybe our worldview says, I don't even have a worldview, which is a worldview. But we just begin to say, I don't know what to do with my life. I don't know what to do with all these pieces of information. I don't know what to do with all of these things. Well, does a worldview matter? Well, absolutely it does. Because a worldview is going to be how you interpret the new pieces that come in. So say you find some new pieces and here, what do I do with this? What do I do with this pain? What do I do with this sorrow? What do I do with this piece of information? What do I do with that? And it helps you to know what to do with these different things in my life. So why should you study your worldview? Because I think you need to understand why you believe what you believe, if what you believe is right, and then see how the pieces fit within your worldview. Are they fitting? Are all the pieces fitting within your worldview? Are you have a good, and what I'm going to show you over this series is that I believe without a doubt that the Bible has the best picture of what's going on in our lives. It answers the big questions. It answers the small questions. It answers a lot of things. And I think it helps us to see why life is the way why evil happens, why good things happen to bad people. I think there are answers for that, and I think the Bible clearly teaches that. The problem is people don't really understand their worldview. They've only heard certain things about God, and they created their own worldview about that, and they're wrong. They created a worldview about people, and their view is wrong. Not all ideas are equal, but I'm going to show you, I believe, that I think the Bible presents us a great worldview that you can put all your pieces in. And then second thing, and this is why we're studying worldview, is that it's going to influence your actions and behaviors. You know, we need to open our eyes to the fact that ideas have consequences. Ideas have consequences. You see, as you're dealing with people and you're hearing their opinions and viewpoints, a lot of times what you need to do is look at where does that come from? Because there were ideas that probably led them to those conclusions. There were ideas, because ideas have consequences. And good ideas have good consequences, and bad ideas have bad consequences, and that is a reality. Not all ideas are equal. I love that, because a lot of times, you know, we want to say this is the truth. All people are equal. We're all equal in the eyes of God, but not ideas. People are equal, but not ideas. And sometimes we've got this concept that you know, that if we don't agree with an idea that we're somehow mistreating someone. No, the problem is people are great. People are wonderful. We should love people and value people, but not value and love all ideas, because false ideas can kill you. They can hurt you. This is what Paul is saying. He says, you know, there are bad ideas in the world, and we need to understand that there are bad ideas and that those bad ideas have consequences. For example of this was, I was watching a talk show where it was kind of a liberal talk show, and it was a small market talk show, but they brought on someone who'd written a book about the fact that single parenting doesn't work. And what they were basically saying is all you have to do is look at the statistics. Now, this happened to be a woman, and she was saying, look, I'm not saying that every single parent is a bad parent. I'm not saying that. All you have to do is look at the statistics, and you can see that when a child is raised with a mother and a father, that the success rate of those children compared to those who are raised in a single parent home is just phenomenal. Where do most of the criminals come out of? They come out of single-parent homes. Where does depression, much higher rate of depression from kids coming out of single-parent homes. Suicide, much higher rate of suicide coming out of single-parent homes. And she went on and on and on about the stats. And all she was saying is that the nuclear family is a good idea. Now, it doesn't always work out. It doesn't mean every single nuclear family is perfect, nor does it mean every single parent is a bad situation. There are many parents who ought to be commended for doing a great job as a single parent, and that's the only choice they had, and that's how life has dealt with them, and so they're doing the best that they can in those situations. But good ideas are good ideas because they're good. And see, God gave us the family, and God gave us this whole principle. What a family is supposed to be. It's supposed to be a man and a woman who exclusively come together and form a family, and they raise their kids, and it's their job to train up a child in the way they should go. That is truth. And it's good, and it works. Bad idea to come to this conclusion that it doesn't matter what a family is. You see, there's this idea out there that it doesn't matter. Anything's a family. Just throw some people together, as long as they love one another, it's a great family. No, it's not. You see, God had the right idea. And so good ideas work, bad ideas don't. And we need to be careful that we don't think every idea is a good idea. So let's bring it down here. What are the two goals of the Worldview series? What are we going to talk about in the coming days? I'm so excited. We're going to look at lots of different issues. We're going to look at lots of different things. And we're going to compare worldviews. And we're going to talk about how the Bible has the best worldview. But our first goal is defensive. What do I mean by that? We got to have a good defense. It's clear that we need to understand that people, even within the church, are being deceived and held captive by anti-Christian worldviews that dominate our culture. We live in a different day and time. And there is a war going on in our culture over ideas. And these ideas have a lot to do with our worldview. They have to do with our understanding of God, who He is, and how we can relate to him, if we can relate to him, if he really exists. They have to do with the world itself, where this world come from. Is it an accident or is it a special creation? It has to do with humanity. Are we really created in the image of God, or are we really, just moist robots and survival of the fittest and so forth? And we need to recognize that what this battle going on about these key things about life, about truth and right and wrong and those things. What's going on is there is a battle within our day for the hearts and minds of people, and particularly our young people. And I think as a church, we need to recognize that this battle has been going on a while, and in some ways the church is losing. All right, we've lost some ground here. James Dobson and Gary Bauer write in a book, they say, nothing short of a great civil war of values rages today throughout North America. Two sides with vastly differing and incompatible worldviews are locked in a bitter conflict that permeates every level of society. They're dead on. This is what's happening in our culture today. There's a battle for the hearts and minds, and this is particularly true with our young people. And what I mean by that is that over time we have seen the secularization of America in the sense that we kicked God out of schools. We have controlled the education system, or different aspects have controlled it. We've eliminated the opposing voices, which is the voice for God, the voice for the Christian worldview. And systematically, our culture has become post-Christian. And at the same time, our teenagers, our children are exposed to more and more of this via their phones and television and advertising and different things that are coming their way. And this has changed our young people. And so it's not surprising today that we see our young people leaving the church. We see our young people confused more than ever. And all you got to do is go look online, and you can find all kinds of studies that talk about these particular things. But what we're seeing is that more than ever, our young people within the church, we raise them in church. We're good parents. We take our kids to church on Sunday, and we take them to youth group and children's ministry and activities and vacation Bible schools and those things. And we think we've got it covered, but we really don't. And statistics and surveys and studies are showing that we are losing ground with our kids. We are losing ground with our young people, and this is shown in so many different ways. Josh McDowell once did a study recently that showed that basically, and I'm kind of summarizing it and rounding some numbers here, but you can go look at the study yourself, says that 3 out of 10 Christian teenagers raised in the church agree with this statement. Now listen to the statement carefully. There is no such thing as absolute truth. People may define truth in contradictory ways and still be correct. Did you hear that? If we say there's no such thing as absolute truth, then essentially we're denying Jesus. You say, what do you mean denying Jesus? These are Christian teens who would say, hey, I accepted Christ, I'm going to heaven. All right, listen, Jesus said, I am truth. And so if we're denying there's absolute truth, then what we're saying is, Jesus, you didn't speak absolute truth. That you're not the only way. So we're saying you're not true because there's no absolute truth, and contradictory terms can be true. This is the whole idea of what is true. And if we say there is no truth, then we're basically saying that the claims of Jesus are not true. And so essentially we're making a non-Christian statement. And they found that 3 out of 10 agreed with that statement. Another 3 weren't sure. That means 6 out of the 10 really didn't have a clear understanding that there's absolute truth. Now, as a Christian, as someone who believes in Jesus, I absolutely believe in truth. Because if I don't believe in absolute truth, then I'm not going to believe in Jesus, or I'm just going to believe Jesus is another way, and there are many ways to God, and it's just my truth, or whatever. And that would be contradictory to what Jesus said. Another study by George Barna actually concluded that only 9% of Christian teenagers believe in absolute truth. And so we're not doing a good job of presenting the claims of Christ. We're not doing a good job of convincing them of the truth of the gospel, who Jesus is and what he did. We're not doing a good job of that. Another study showed that our kids who are going into college, again, kids that we raised in our churches, are going to college, and by their senior year, 6 out of 10 are no longer claiming to be born again. They've lost their faith. They no longer believe in Jesus the same way that they did when they were teenagers. They've lost it. What's going on here? The worldview has permeated in and changed their worldview, and they're beginning to recognize that their old worldview doesn't fit anymore, and so they're rejecting truth claims of Jesus. They're rejecting what they've been taught when they were raised. This is what is happening today. And we're seeing that. And so to be defensive, these trends are hugely alarming, and we need to wake up to the fact that we're not doing a good job. So you see, these kids knew the Bible story. They've heard the gospel. They maybe even have experienced the Holy Spirit speaking into their lives. And yet, because we didn't arm them or prepare them to handle these worldviews that are going to come in and attack them, they're just not prepared for it. And so they succumb to the worldviews of the world, to outside worldviews, the based on human tradition, understanding, and reason. And they're no longer defending the faith. They're no longer seeing the faith. And some would say that they're still religious. In fact, there are many studies that show that these same kids who quit going to church, they quit believing like we believe, but they still kind of hold to a vague religiousness. They still believe in God, but they no longer believe in the viewpoint, the worldview of Jesus himself. That's the problem. You see, believing in God is not what we're aiming at. Believing in Jesus is what we're aiming at, because that's the Christian message, is that Jesus is the Son of God. He died on a cross for our sins and he rose again. And that is the essential Christian message. And so we adapt the worldview of Jesus himself. Lastly, our last goal, second goal, is an offensive goal. We want to train up ourselves in this idea of worldview and what worldviews are, because we want to actively live out these truths of what we genuinely believe about God, what we believe about the world, people, truth, and right and wrong. And we want to do it in a culture that is different. See, our culture is saying relativism. Our culture is saying it's full of confusion and doubt. And we want to live it out in front of them, because we want people to see what this is really all about. You know, one of the problems that I see in the Christian world is we have, over time, we have separated out the sacred and the secular. Now, what I mean by that is this. We've kind of taken one side of our life, the life over here, and we said, this is all about God and Bible and prayer and going to church and just, what we believe on the inside. And then we separated that from the secular. What is the secular? It's what we do on the outside. So it's, going to school, going to work, having a job, making money, politics, and all these other things. And that's a different thing. And we began to separate these, and we kind of pulled ourselves into the holy huddle, and we didn't get involved in these things. And so when things went wrong in a certain area, TV, cultural things, and politics, we just kind of said, well, we're just not going to talk about that. We're going to put the sacred over here, what we believe, and it's our private little world, and then we're not going to deal with it over here. Huge, huge mistake. Because what has happened over time is that Christians have pulled out of the marketplace. We've pulled out of things. And as a result, we've turned them over to people who have different worldviews. And we let them run the deal. We let them run everything. We let them take care of it. We let them be the thinkers and the teachers and the politicians and all these kind of things. And we say, well, and they say to us, it's fine. You believe whatever you want to believe. You just don't bother us. We have made a huge mistake. Because the reality is that what we believe about God is about reality. What we believe about the universe is reality. What we believe about truth and people and right and wrong, these are all things that are realities, and they are to be lived out in life. They're to be lived out. We don't separate the sacred from the secular. Everything in life is sacred. And the secular and sacred go together. And so we live it out in our families. We live it out in our homes. We live it out in the world of politics. We live it out in the marketplace. We live it out in our discussions. We live it out everywhere. And by pulling out of society and no longer being engaged in these things and creating our holy huddles and waiting for Jesus to come and, to rescue us out of this world, we have falsely pulled out, and the ramifications of that have been huge. What we need today is good Christian thinkers. What we need today are those who can address these issues in intelligent ways and be out in the marketplace and have discussions about God, about worldview, about, what this universe is, about truth, about, right and wrong, about who we are as people, and bring all of those ideas, the worldview of Jesus, into the world. See, Jesus told us we're to be light bearers. And what that means is we are to share the light of Jesus everywhere we go. Now, that brings some interesting questions like, what light? What's the light of Jesus? Light doesn't come from us. It comes from Jesus. Jesus tells us who God is. Jesus tells us about the universe. Jesus reflects what people are and leads by example. Jesus gives us an understanding of truth. He gives us an understanding of right and wrong. That's the light that we're to shine. He's the source of our light. And then when we take that light, this is why Jesus said, "I'm the light of the world," is he says, I bring you that. The world's full of darkness, misunderstanding, confusion, human tradition, deceitful ideas. But Jesus comes along and brings the right ideas, the truth. And so not only is it this light that we bear, the source of the light is Jesus, and we're told that what we're supposed to do with the light is to reflect it. That's why Jesus said, "You are the light of the world." In other words, what Jesus is saying is that you're a follower of me. You believe like me. You have a worldview like I have. Now go and spread that information. Spread that light to everyone around you. This is not simply Jesus saying, "Hey, go and witness to people." What he's really saying is spread all of this. Go disciple other people. Go tell them, share your worldview. Share the worldview of Jesus. What did Jesus believe about God? What did Jesus believe about the world? What did Jesus believe about people? What did Jesus believe about truth? And what did Jesus believe about right and wrong? This is light. And what you're to do is share that light. That's why we as believers have a purpose, and that is to be a light bearer. A light bearer then is a follower of Christ who is allowing the light of God's truth to shine through him or her to others. This means that you and I need to understand our worldview. And our worldview comes from Jesus. Now, the one danger that we all have, it's easy to have a small idea of what being a Christian is all about. A small idea, like, it's just, hey, this is all about me going to heaven. This is all about, my personal salvation. This is all about my comfort. This is all about me feeling good. This is all about me, 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 me. Listen, Christianity is so much more than that. Yeah, Jesus came to save you. Yes, he wants you to go to heaven to be with him, but he wants you now to be a follower of Jesus. And he wants you to go out and to make a difference in this world. Go be something. Go make a difference in this world. Use the skills and talents and things that God has given you and be the best that you can be. Go out and bear the light of Jesus to a lost and dying and confused and misunderstanding world. You show them who God is. Go show them what the universe really is. Go show them the value of people and what God says about how they're created in the image of God. Go show them truth. Go show them what's right and wrong. Go show them these things. Be light. Go do it, and go do it well. That's what it means to be a light bearer. I'm so excited about this series. I hope you'll follow along with us. I think you'll learn a lot. Next week, or my next session, is going to be about how we're going to take worldview and why we need to teach this to our kids and how we can begin that process of doing that. I think you'll understand and see clearly how important it is that we train up our kids in this area. Hope to see you then.